I'd played Overwatch, and it was just really interesting just seeing every little mechanic. Like even when you kill somebody, a little red skull just flashes really quick in the center of the screen. And I would pay attention to that little red skull, and I noticed that like I kind of got a good feeling inside whenever that red skull popped up, or whenever you shoot somebody, you can hear like a little thip, 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 like just this little tiny sound that you know that you're hitting them. Like just all these little things that are in these games now that are designed to keep you hooked.
It's like self-improvement on steroids. It's like whenever you are playing a game, you get sort of XP points to pop up. You get constant feedback about what you're doing. Like you're improving. And that's exactly what a teenager is after. It's like a hyped up version of self-improvement, you know? And that's what a teenager wants. They want to, you know, improve themselves and head out into the world. That's what we're built for. But actually what you do is you just pour those hours down a digital drain, basically. And all of those hours you had playing the game, they don't sort of stack up in your real world, in your real life. Hello guys, once again. Welcome to another episode of the MvR podcast. I'm here today with Sawyer. Hello, Sawyer.
Hello.
So good to have you here. And we're going to talk again.
Thank you. Good to be here.
I'm glad to hear that. And we're going to talk about video games today, and potentially talking about video game addiction as well, because I've done podcasts on this before, but it's a pretty common problem many people have. And so, yeah, I would love to talk about this. So we'll just start off. So, are you playing video games right now, or do you still play, or?
I play very infrequently nowadays. Usually, I only play I try to only play about 2 hours or so a week, and it helps that I keep myself busy to stick to that. But that's usually it. Once about 2 hours or so have gone by, or I start to like catch myself, you know, not doing what I'm supposed to be doing throughout the day, I'll stop myself. But this was not the case a few years back, right? When you were a teenager or in that sort of period. So how many hours were you playing back then, do you think? When I was a teenager, I was probably using almost all of my free time. I was, if I had time in the morning before school, I would play. And then when I came home from school to the time I went to bed, which is usually about midnight or 1 o'clock, I would play. Didn't really get any homework done or anything. I'm honestly surprised I graduated high school. But yeah, pretty much all my spare time was done with video games.
It's really like not an uncommon story at all. Like that's like so many people's teenage years, you know, they didn't care about school. They were just playing games the whole time, basically. Mm-hmm. I guess that's kind of what I was doing as well, if I think back, pretty much. Yeah. And so what was back then? What were your games of choice? Did you have like a particular game that you were hooked on?
Well, fortunately, I didn't get caught into the EverQuest thing because I was, I didn't, you know, internet. This was back in like the early aughts and everything. So internet was still, I guess, somewhat of a commodity, like a luxury type thing.
Yeah. But
games of choice, really anything on the. I played a lot of Xbox, a lot of Halo, a lot of GameCube stuff like Super Smash Brothers. I remember one time I was awake. I don't know why, but I was awake for 3 days straight playing Super Monkey Ball, and I have no idea why.
I have no idea what Super Monkey Ball is, but it sounds awesome. Yeah, Halo. Yeah, I mean, I personally played Halo 3 and Halo Reach quite a bit. I mean, these shooters. These can be very addictive. The cool thing about shooters is there is actually quite a bit of skill involved in the game, so it's pretty good in that sense. But I guess unless you're actually going to be, my opinion goes like this: unless you're genuinely going to be some kind of pro gamer, you know, if you're actually going to do that, then do it. But aside from that, it's not worth it. Basically, it's not worth your time.
And that's a hard thing to kind of manage too, because you never know
I'm sure a lot of, especially kids nowadays, with how big Twitch is getting, a lot of them are kind of thinking, oh yeah, I can do this. I can be a pro, I can be a pro gamer. And you never really know until you're addicted to it already. Like you're never really think you're on that level. Cause like Overwatch, for instance, you start out at the bronze ranks and everything and you work your way up and you don't really know if you're going to be able to be a pro gamer at that until you're already like waist deep into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's actually something I hadn't considered because now we have Twitch around nowadays, and we've got actually people that like PewDiePie who actually make their livings just by playing video games. So there's actually real financial incentives to sit behind your computer and play video games. But man, I don't know about that choice. I can imagine if I was 18, I would see it as a really amazing lifestyle choice. But now, even if I was making good money playing video games, I would still refuse to do it. Because I just don't believe it's I just fundamentally believe that the real world is more worth your time than video games. That's just how I feel.
Likewise. I can talk to you for hours about that. Like, oh my God. There's some times where I'm sitting there thinking, like, where I'm trying to. Okay, so for instance, me and my father-in-law are building. We're kind of renovating my house right now, and it's something I'm really interested in. Like, I love the idea of house renovation, whether it's doing new countertops, taking down some walls, putting some new stuff up. We're going to be moving the bathtub over by like 2 feet to make it a little bigger.
Right.
Stuff like that. That's stuff that interests me. I wish I knew it interested me. It interested me when I was a kid because I probably would have done a little more of that than playing Halo,
But what's really annoying about that is if Halo wasn't there, then there's actually a pretty good chance that those other things would have interested you. The thing is about video games, it's like self-improvement on steroids. It's like whenever you are playing a game, you get sort of XP points that pop up. You get constant feedback about what you're doing. Like you're improving. And that's exactly what a teenager is after. So it's like a super stimuli in that it's like a hyped up version of self-improvement, And that's what a teenager wants, is they want to improve themselves and head out into the world. That's what we're built for. But actually what you do is you just pour those hours down a digital drain, basically. And all of those hours you had playing the game, they don't sort of stack up in your real world, in your real life. So they're just completely wasted away. It's really just not good.
Yeah, I think in moderation, like especially nowadays, in moderation, I don't think they could be too much of a problem. But I mean, the problem is, especially with kids, a lot of kids don't know moderation. Like you're reading all these stories about kids playing Fortnite, and like all the time, I've read at least 1 or 2 stories where kids are literally like going to the bathroom in buckets or just completely soiling themselves just so they don't have to get away with it, like get away from the game. Like that's the problem. I mean, I think moderation is key, but that's lost on a certain age group just because it's the nature of the age group.
This is what people do to just wave away this problem. They just say, look, you just need to take responsibility and you need to just play games in moderation. It's like, Jesus Christ. First of all, the games are available for teenagers with underdeveloped brains, right? Their brains are not developed to be able to understand or use moderation. They're not adults, right? So there's no way you can tell them to take responsibility. And then people say, well, the parents should take responsibility for their teenagers. It's like, yeah, but there's no particular warnings on any of these games about a potential addiction that could come along. So it's not like the parents are particularly aware of the dangers of what could happen because nobody's really told them about it.
And people, I mean, it's so easy for people. Like I see this a lot on Reddit, where when this discussion comes up, and people, I've seen it so many times where they go, "Oh, well, the parents should be able to educate themselves," and it's like, I feel like you can really tell who the people are with kids and who the people are who don't have them.
Yeah,
because like what kind of a parent, after coming home from an 8-9 hour job and doing what they have to do at home, like you don't really have time to sit down and educate yourself on the particulars of video gaming, Like,
yeah,
I don't
right.
I think it is, I think it is part of the parent's responsibility, but I don't think we can be expected I don't think we can expect the parents to educate themselves, if I can use that word, on all these different forms of media that their kids might be using.
Oh my god, exactly. It's not like it's just video games. They'd have to educate themselves on, I don't know, violent movies, pornography, just countless, like YouTube, like potential YouTube rabbit holes you could go down nowadays. There's like no way that a parent could actually educate themselves about all this stuff. It's just a way to brush away the problem. And yeah, it's one thing about having an adult who's addicted to video games, but when it's like a teenager, it's like they're really pretty much defenseless against this. When you're 13 or whatever, but yeah, there's still no real age limit on any of the games to stop it. So
I think it's especially troublesome when you're a teenager too. I mean, it's troublesome at any age nowadays, especially. I mean, I'm thinking back to when I was a kid, but
yeah.
I know it's different nowadays, but especially when you're a teenager and you're in that stage of your life where you're trying to form, bonds with people, you're trying to find peers that have like interests, like then you're all stuck in that rabbit hole together. You're all like addicted to the same thing, and it's I guess you're finding encouragement from one another with it than anything else. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's like a virtual box. It's basically like a virtual version of the real world. You've got your self-improvement, you've got your friends, right? You've got a social circle in the game.
Right.
You've got this whole life, but it comes at the expense of the real life, the thing that is much more important. And also it's much more appealing because it's easier. There's emotion, it's easier to improve in a game. Improving in real life is, first of all, you don't know when it's happening. There's no experience point meter sort of telling you when you're sort of getting better, and it takes longer and it's harder. So it's I don't know. It's like inevitable that like teenagers are going to end up playing these games, and it's the worst when it comes to like MMOs, like you said, like EverQuest or World of Warcraft or whatever else. I'm not really up to date with the latest ones, but.
There's I don't know if it's exactly, I think it's called a MOBA. Like I said, I don't play a lot of PC, but or I never did. But there's one called Dota 2, which I guess is really popular right now. But I think right now MMORPGs are kind of getting, I guess, pushed away, right. And players are focusing on these things called MOBAs, where I might be radically off, so I'm sure somebody listening is going to say that I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I guess they show up in an arena with a couple other people, and they control like a little horde of monsters or whatever, or characters that they use to kind of do a tower defense type of game.
Oh yeah. So it's like a strategy game, I guess.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of Age of Empires or Civilization. If we're only trying to conquer the other team.
Yeah, I think I've seen, what's the name of that game? StarCraft or something? I don't remember. But to be honest, it's funny because I'm actually quite happy that I don't know the names of these games. Like it's actually I'm thinking, well, that's pretty cool because that means I've actually got a pretty good life, and I don't really have time for these games anymore. Not that there's anything particularly wrong with them. It's just that, like I said, there's always something better to be doing. In my opinion, I know that many people will play for like 2 hours a day, and that's cool, but it seems to me like there's always something else that you could be doing. Anyway.
It's interesting, like just watching everything that's involved in the gaming news right now. Just because people are starting to, I guess, become more aware of what game companies are trying to do to keep them addicted. Like whether it's in the psychology field, like in Overwatch, for instance, all the tiny little ticks and color flashes that happen that keep you addicted, or if it's right now Rockstar, I guess, is catching some flack because you're allowed to actually gamble in their games now. In like in Grand Theft Auto 5, I think it might be Red Dead Redemption because that's newer, but I think it's Grand Theft Auto 5 where kids can actually buy in-game currency to gamble with in casinos that are in that game. And it's funny. It's interesting seeing all these little addictive practices and seeing the gaming community kind of pick up on it. Like, I think there's starting to be a little bit of a movement for, where people are seeing exactly how nefarious video gaming can be, especially nowadays.
That's actually really good to hear. I think that is happening. It's about time. Like, holy shit! Like this kind of movement should have been happening a long time ago. And I'm not surprised that they've basically made gambling available. I mean, gambling has been in video games now for actually quite a while. To give you an example, there was a game called RuneScape many years back. I don't know if you ever heard of this, but underage gambling has been done on that game since like 2004 or before.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's because the fact it works like this. Like, of course, you win. There's something called staking in that game, and you fight each other, and it's pretty random who wins the fight. And you can win a cash prize, and it's virtual money. But of course, the virtual money is worth something in the real world. So what you can do is you can actually be, staking $100, $500 in the game, and because there is sort of like a disconnect. It's legalized underage gambling, so it's been around for quite a long time actually. But and nowadays there's loot boxes and stuff like that, where it's just become more and more just obvious what they're doing, trying to milk money out of people. It's actually kind of gross, actually.
Yeah, that loot box thing too. That's fairly new too, but that got me for a while too. Like Overwatch, they have loot boxes. Oof! Let me tell you, man, that stuff is addictive. Like,
of course
I eventually just stopped playing Overwatch just because I purposely missed an event. And I think missing the event kind of made me realize that I couldn't complete the game now. And it kind of just made me lose complete interest in it. But yeah, those loot boxes they're popping up everywhere. And those things are crazy addictive.
It's brutal. We already know. They know. The game developers are fully aware. Of course they know. They know how addictive they're going to be. And it's really, you're offering gambling to 13-year-olds and nobody is doing anything about it. It's kind of really strange, actually. Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
It's interesting. Like, right now, I guess in Europe, they're trying to do something about it. I know when Star Wars Battlefront 2 came out, they had pretty much most of the game was locked behind loot boxes, and a lot of people were accusing it of being pay-to-win loot boxes and stuff. I know Belgium was kind of starting a fire over that. So, I mean, I guess there's starting to be some progress in the European Union, but not so much over in the States where we are. I don't know. A lot of the time I listen to this guy on YouTube named Jim Sterling, who is vehemently against unethical practices in video games like gambling and loot boxes and everything. So that's where I get most of my information on this stuff nowadays. So I could be wrong.
Yeah, I hope there is. I fucking hope so. But I guess it'll take a long time. I mean, it's become so obvious now that I guess it's not surprising that people are starting to pick up on it. But actually, it's been going on for quite a while. I don't know if you know about, like, I was telling my other podcast guest about the variable ratio, which is just to go into it in case you're listening to this, because if you're a gamer, this is really important that you know how this works. So there was a guy called B.F. Skinner in about 1940, right? And he put these pigeons he used rats as well, but he put these pigeons into like a box. And they were just stuck in the box, okay? And there was a button in the box. The pigeon, if he pecked it, if he sort of pressed the button, food would be delivered inside the box. And so he did it first, and he did it on a fixed ratio. So every time the pigeon pressed the button, he would get a food pellet. And of course, the pigeon learned over time to press the button if he was hungry. Fine. Afterwards, he changed it, the experimenter Skinner, he changed it so that actually the food pellets would come in randomly into the box and would not happen every time. And so what happened is that after he changed it to be randomly, or a variable ratio of probability, the pigeon would press the button more and more and more and more. And basically the pigeon would be pressing it all day, essentially addicted to this act of getting food pellets at random intervals. And this is what you have in games all the time, these variable ratios, just like at a slot machine when you're pulling the lever. And it's really addictive mechanism when you have randomized rewards. Like in MMOs, you'll kill a monster and there'll be a rare item that you'll receive, like 1 in 1,000 chance of getting it. And then there's the loot boxes, which are even more obvious. Like it's a variable ratio, it's a randomized reward, and they're profiting on it just like a casino. But the people who are there are under 18, and they're paying real money, right, for these loot boxes, right? So it's underage gambling.
I mean, they could pay. That's the part that's murky right now. People are trying. There's what is it? Blizzard, all them. They're trying to insist that it's not exactly gambling because you always get something. It might not be the item you want, but you always win something. Like that's. I don't know. I think if you're not getting the item that you want, I mean, I feel like it's gambling. That's I don't know.
That is a huge cop out because most what you're going to get. I've never done it, but I already know how it goes. You'll get many sort of low value items that you can win, right? So you win something, but it's not worth very much. And then at the rare occasion, you can get lucky and you can win a huge reward. It's the same thing. Just because you don't win nothing, you just win a low value reward. It doesn't make any difference. You still got the variable ratio. It's the same. Doesn't the same thing happen in a slot machine? Like sometimes you win like small rewards. People get super addicted to those.
Right, but everybody wants the big reward in the slot machine, just like everybody wants the whatever the big reward is in these games. Like in the loot box games.
Yeah, of course. So it's the same.
So I feel like under our traditional sense of gambling, by the legal definition of gambling, it doesn't hit it yet, but I believe it is gambling. Like it's still gambling. You're still putting money down because you want something specific, and if you don't, like you're basically what's the word I'm looking for? You're leaving it to chance on whether or not you're going to get that item.
Yeah, that's called gambling.
Yeah.
I
agree. That's why I agree. I think, because they're saying that you still get something, it's not considered gambling. I think the legal definition of gambling to reflect where we are in the 21st century just hasn't caught up yet. But I still think it is gambling. It just needs to catch up to the legal side of it.
I've got to wonder because yes, it hasn't. Our laws have not kept up with technology because it has moved quite fast. However, I've got to wonder. Like the gaming industry is like huge, right? So they have hundreds of millions of dollars to spare.
Yeah, billions they made this year. I can't remember the exact amount, but they made billions this year. It's ridiculous.
So they are powerful industries, right? So I'm sure that they have some abilities to lobby governments right now and to sort of try to stop any changes in laws that would perhaps be pushed through.
For sure.
So people have got a real fight on their hands, as usually is greed against people. And you've got, because these companies are basically just exploiting teenagers for their own profit, and everybody and everyone. But at least, if you're going to be exposed to gambling, you're supposed to be over 18. And because it's basically a loophole in the law that has, like you said, hasn't caught up. So they're just going to exploit it as much as they can. And, these loot boxes are worth, Jesus, like how much do you think they're making from people buying these?
Without a doubt, like I said, my knowledge is sort of limited on it. I did play a lot of Overwatch and I kept up with it for a while, but I know they made a lot of money. I know Fortnite makes a ton of money by this new thing that's happening right now, where you randomize the marketplace and you keep things up for a limited time. I think, I mean, loot boxes are bad, but I think they're shifting towards this now that loot boxes are kind of getting under fire.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, yeah.
The video game industry did make a lot of money from loot boxes, Overwatch especially. You can see their financial records of how much Blizzard made off of this stuff. You know, and mobile games in general, like mobile games have, they're not loot boxes exactly, but they're still little microtransactions that they just make tons of money off of.
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter, because this is why it's really important to understand the mechanics of what you need to watch out for. Because now the loot boxes are pretty well known. They're just going to move on to another technique using the same variable ratio mechanic, right? It's always the randomized rewards that are very addictive, and they'll just keep introducing these in different ways, and people will think it's something new, but actually it's always the variable ratio. It's always that same mechanic that's being used to make money.
Yeah, there's like I was saying, like they are using a new randomized way. I guess they're kind of shifting. Fortnite started this, as far as I know. I know Crash Team Racing, that's another game that sort of uses this now. But every day they update their marketplace. And, you know, you see these items. You might see an item you want that's worth like $10, maybe $15. And if you want it, you got to buy it fast, because who knows when the next time is. It's going to be in the marketplace. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so what you've got there is what do they call it in sales, like just urgency or whatever. You know, when they said,
yeah.
like, you know, like in a sales pitch, when they say, well, there's only 10 left, so you should buy it right now. It's sales, it's marketing, and that's what it's about.
Yeah, and I guess it's not gambling in that. I mean, you're getting a randomized reward, but you know what you're getting. But it still feels gross to me. Like, you know, you're still implanting that sense of urgency in these kids. You know what I mean? And kids or teenagers who might be playing these video games.
I think what people should really consider is whenever they are, with actually just in general in life, but in video games as well, is like all of these things are created with a financial, especially nowadays. Like, how are they making money from this game? Because what you'll find, every app, every game, everything is basically like a sales funnel into you eventually giving over your money, as much of your money as possible, right? And tech companies have gone even better and better at making people hand over their money. So it's like, how is this company making money? If it's a monthly subscription, like in a MMO, then it's in their interest to try and keep you playing for as long as they can, which means trying to, you know, make you addicted to the game using various techniques to try and addict you. And if it's, you know, and if it's another game, it'll be loot boxes or any microtransactions, any possible way of just getting you to hand over your money. That's it. That's all. This what they want. And of course, there'll be some game developers at the company that want to make a really good game, and they love, like, it has to be a good game, right? In general, otherwise people aren't going to play it. But then they'll have the other side of the company, which is focused on profit, and they're going to use all the techniques they can possibly use. And ethics don't seem to matter at all to these people. Oh yeah, no, they don't.
There's a video you might be interested in regards to this topic. I'm trying to find it, but I can't find it. Some executive who runs this this mobile gaming website, kind of talked about the whole thing with that, like how to best give the gamers a nice experience at the beginning and then sort of take it away from them to get them spending more and more money. He did this on a PowerPoint presentation that was in a conference area that was recorded and put on YouTube, but yeah. I don't know why I can't find it, but it's pretty crazy sick stuff.
Yeah, if you were in the gaming industry, I would pretty sure at this point they're probably just talking about it openly. Like, how can we lure people in and how can we get them hooked and give them dopamine spikes and whatnot? They probably just talk about it like it's everyday conversation. I just don't get how people can just... I never understood how you can just do this and you just don't care about any ethical responsibility or anything like that. Just profit. Like, that's all that matters.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you use that word hooked, because that's what they refer to the big spenders as. They call them whales.
Yeah, exactly.
So, it's the people who spend all the money. They make up a small percentage of the players, but they're whales. They want the whales. So it's funny you use the word hooked to describe it.
Yeah, to hook in a whale. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Hook them in. But yeah, I mean that's exactly right. They know this. I mean, they know how it works. They're on the inside. They know that the majority. I think I've watched talks like this as well, and the majority of their income comes from, like you say, the whales. You know, the people that are really hooked and are just spending money all the time. Yeah, and that's what they want to do. So what they're after addiction. That's the goal. Their goal is addiction. So that's what it is. So yeah, it'd be nice if somebody did something about it. To be honest.
I mean, I don't know. It seems like I assume, judging by your accent, you're originally from somewhere in Europe. Am I accurate in saying that? Or?
Yeah, I'm from the UK. Yeah.
Because you guys seem a little bit quicker to this stuff than we are in the States. Like it's kind of mind-numbing over here that the evidence is right in front of us over here and we're not doing anything about it.
I don't know, but there's a lot of dumb people in the UK as well. I promise you. I don't know. I mean, personally, for me, the only reason, I mean, I used to play, like I said, a few MMOs, and even back then, I was catching on to it. I remember around 20. Because I was used to play an MMO, and around 2012, a new company bought the game, and then everything changed, and they introduced it was something called the Squeal of Fortune or something, and it was basically like a loot box. And immediately I was like, this is fucked up. Like they wanted me to pay money for this, and you can get like, if I remember right, it was a long time ago, but you could get the best item in the game just by playing this. It was like a wheel, you know, and you would see.
You never put money down on the squeal?
Not once. No, not even then. But yeah, I mean, I hope that people are getting wise to it. But once again, it doesn't matter if 20-year-olds are getting wise to it when there are always new 13-year-olds coming onto the game.
Exactly.
So a movement is nice, but yeah.
That's the thing that scares. I mean, you know, the gambling itself doesn't scare me the most, but the way it's affecting the children does. Because I mean, it's nice that you're making, you know, I guess for the companies, it's nice they're making money off of these 13-year-olds or who are stealing mom's credit card or who know that it's stored on their PlayStation accounts and they could spend this money.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think they've thought of this. I just think they don't care about the ramifications of this, the future consequences of this. Like we're with how popular gaming has become, like I said, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry now. We are creating an entire generation of people who are going to be addicted to gambling. They're going to be addicted to fast rewards. Their attention spans are going to be much, much smaller, you know, because of this system. It's kind of scary what the future holds for this.
And here comes VR.
Yeah, VR. I've personally never used it before, but VR is getting pretty heavy right now. Like that's getting up there in just in the graphics, like the immersion factor. It's getting pretty good.
It's only a matter of time. So what we have here is we have VR is going to come along. It's going to be even more immersive than what we've got now. But not only that will it be immersive, but they're still going to include all the same hooks that they're using in the games they've got now. So you're going to have a VR environment all with the same addictive hooks, because it's still not against the law to do it. And if it's not against the law to put these hooks into your game, then the companies will just keep doing it because nobody's going to stop them.
Right. That's such a hard thing to do too, because you want them to be ethical with this. You know, you don't want them to put these addictive things, but that's a scary line too when you try to get government involved in it, you know, because then you've got government with their hands in it and they try to control everything. That happened back in the 90s when they were having all these court hearings on if Mortal Kombat is too violent for children. You know what I mean? We saw that a little bit where the government was trying to get involved in it. And granted, video games were different back then. They're much, much more addictive than they are, you know, now than they were back then. But that's a scary line to draw too, with how much control is good for the government to have with this, if they should even have any.
So look, I mean, I mean, people are. I think, in my opinion, people are too often automatically anti-government for everything, right? Because the idea of how our sort of society works is you've got the marketplace, but if you just leave the marketplace to do its thing, what you end up with is people using all the most unethical means possible to make profit, like they're doing right now, basically. Because there's no regulation on it. The companies can do whatever they like. They can put gambling mechanics into their game. There's not really any other way to stop the companies doing it than the government putting in some kind of law. I'm not saying like get really involved, but like to set up a law a really simple law, right? Would just say, okay, you can't have gambling mechanics in your games. It's against the law. That's it. Simple as that.
Okay, I was thinking you were trying to figure out like how if the government could regulate addictiveness of a video game, and I was trying to think how would you even do that? But
you can't. You're right. So you can't have the government trying to rate the addictiveness, but there are certain things that can be banned. Yeah, it's pretty simple. Like gambling, like loot boxes, things where people who are under 18 are spending real money to get virtual rewards. And by the way, these virtual rewards are also worth real money because there's a virtual marketplace. So it is 100% gambling because it has real world value.
Especially, there's a game called EVE Online where they actually have the monetary value of these different spaceships you can have. And now, granted, those spaceships take time. Like, you can't just immediately go into the game and get, within 10 hours you have the biggest, best spaceship. Like, they take sometimes like real world months to acquire. But EVE Online is a perfect example where everything has a real world monetary value that you can see. It's pretty wild.
So it's not even really hidden anymore. Like the dollar sign is actually next to the item, right, on that game. This item's worth $10,
Yeah, I mean, figuratively speaking, like, people can charge however much they want, but I guess there's kind of an agreed upon price on how much something should be worth in that game.
Because the virtual item market was always before sort of like on sort of other websites, not on the main website. It was supposed to be against when I was playing MMOs, they were meant to be against the rules. Like, you weren't supposed to sell your items for real cash. But I think that's just gradually just changed, and now real cash is because it never used to be a part of video games. Microtransactions or paying real money for items in the game really never used to happen. So I think it's over in the last 5-6 years they've started to do this.
Yeah, and that's because of online. Like, I mean, how were they supposed to do microtransactions back in the day? There was no internet to do it with. Back in even the original Xbox, like, internet, like, once again, like, I had a lot of gamer friends back then, and I think 2 of them had online,
Yeah.
So it wasn't really a viable marketplace until I guess probably the end of the 360 PS3 era was when they really started kind of toying with it.
And the thing is that back then, before online, the financial incentives were very different. So what happened is you bought the game and that's it. So basically, once you buy the game, like, that's it. There's no the game manufacturers have no real need to have you keep playing the game for hours and hours because there's no extra money in it for them. But nowadays, when you've got monthly subscription or you've got in-game purchases, then they have all the incentive in the world to maximize your time on the game, which did not happen before with old gaming consoles.
Which they do nowadays. Like, I can think of a couple examples off the top of my head where they do it. My wife plays Crash Team Racing. Fortunately, she's not addicted. She didn't play video games when she was a kid.
Yeah.
So I don't think she has that level of addiction. Like, she'll just occasionally turn it on. But for about 3 weeks, they do events. Like, they do Grand Prix Cups where you can unlock, like, new characters, new skins for your carts, new skins for your characters, stuff like that. And after 3 weeks, it goes away. And then 2 weeks later, they have another one. And it just keeps you sucked in. And you can spend real money for in-game currency now to buy these items, so you don't have to even work for them. So there's examples of that now, that I can easily bring up where they do that, where they do make ways for you to stay in the game. Mortal Kombat does that with the Combat League, where there's a season, and that lasts about 3 weeks. Again, 3 weeks seems to be the magic number, where you can compete against other players, get exclusive skins, get exclusive accessories for your characters, and then it goes away. And then a week later, it happens again with a whole brand new set of stuff. Like, there's no in-game currency in Mortal Kombat, but the addictiveness factor, where you have to keep playing or else you're going to miss out on the next big thing, it's still there.
The thing is, though, I imagine that pretty much every game is going to do this now, because what you have is you have a marketplace of competing video games, right? So any video game that doesn't use these tactics to keep people playing will lose out to their competition. So you've got like a marketplace where everybody has to use these techniques, because if they don't use the techniques, they're gonna lose business. They're gonna be kicked out of the marketplace, right? So they
you
have
hit the
to
nail
keep
on the
using
head.
them. So it's just a situation now where everybody is stuck in it. Yeah.
It seems like the only people that are safe are the indie game developers. Like, indie game development has gotten big now. So, you have games, there's video games like Hollow Knight or Undertale or stuff, or Shovel Knight even, that don't have these microtransactions. And maybe it's an issue that the indie game developers can't afford to create an infrastructure, to make these microtransactions, to make these gambling mechanics. But it seems like that's the only safe haven, and I kind of start to wonder how long that's going to be the case, even with them.
As soon as they start using microtransactions, then they're not indie games anymore, basically. Isn't the idea of indie games supposed to be like an alternative, like sort of something different, right?
Yeah, they're made by like just small studios. Like, you'll see a lot of indie games on Kickstarter.
Yeah. And
because they don't have the money to make their own video game with their own funds, so they rely on the fans to do it. Like, those are, I guess, traditionally indie video games.
I guess the reason that people would play them is for something different, right? They want some kind of different game.
They're certainly different. A lot of them are very experimental because they are funded low, so for low amounts of money. So I guess the game devs have to kind of figure out new, interesting mechanics that are different from the norm. So in that way, yes, it is definitely something different.
The thing is, what will happen with these indie games is that when an indie game begins to become popular, right, and you get like, I don't know, 1 million people playing it or 10 million people playing it, or then what they're going to do is the game developers are going to go, holy shit, we have 10 million people playing our game. So if we introduce microtransactions now, we can make millions of dollars from these players. And that's going to happen every time. Every time an indie game becomes popular, the same techniques are going to be used on them because it's too much of a cash cow to resist, Yeah,
and you're right. It's already happened. As far as I know, Rocket League, it's called. It used to be an indie game, but they do have microtransactions in it now because it's just so immensely popular. So you're right. I mean, that will happen with companies once they realize they have enough fans that'll stick with them.
It's quite funny because this is why you just have to understand sort of the structure of how the media works, right? Because I don't play video games. I haven't played them in years, and I don't even know the names of these games. But I can still tell you what's going to happen in terms, like, for example, of course that's what's going to happen to indie games because that's what financial incentives do to everything. So it's like once you understand like the structure of sort of the models of how it works, like you can sort of predict all the games, they're all going to sort of end up the same way.
Yeah, it's all business. We're not people to these companies. We're products. We're whales and fish. That's pretty much what it is. Like,
I guess you've got the plankton. Most people are plankton, and then you've got the whales, right?
I'd say I'm a plankton, yeah. Because like I said, I still occasionally play, and if something awesome comes out, I'll spend like $5 on it, like if it's a new character or something. But I don't nearly play as much as I used to.
I see myself as more of a salmon, I think. Swimming against like the tide. I don't know.
I was about to say you're not even in the ocean. You're kind of just in your own stream.
I'm a monkey or something. I don't know. Some other animal. I don't know. Yeah, so that's the video gaming world right now, but it's really crazy time because You know, and we are talking about it before, but there is also right now like you said, there's Twitch. There are actual incentives for players to play the games more than ever before. There are esports are bigger than ever right now, right? They like fill up stadiums playing games now.
Yeah, it's wild. Like, back when I was a kid, saying that video games were a sport was hilarious. Like, people would laugh about it, like, right. Oh yeah, it's a sport. Like, it is very close to actually like becoming a sport. Everybody's trying to jump on board right now.
Yeah, I mean, look, to give video games credit, games like Halo, even back Halo 3 or whatever, there was real skill involved. You had to be smart, you had to have quick reactions, and I'm sure the newer games just require even more skill, But there's a problem with all this. I've got a big problem with all this because, yeah, they require skill, but what you're doing is you're encouraging loads of people to spend all of their time. I think people should think about like the physical reality of what they're doing when they're playing a game. What you're doing is you're sat completely still with your eyes wide open, just looking at a screen for like often 10 hours a day. And it's like, yeah. Is this like you have like one life? Like, are you sure this is what you want to be doing? Like, yeah. I know there's a possibility of becoming a pro gamer, and only if you're really dedicated to that should you do that. But if you're not, just forget it. Like, there's something else you could be doing.
I agree, especially because I guarantee you somebody will say like, oh well, you practice at video games, people practice at football, but people don't go to football practice for 10 hours straight. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not trying to hold one sport above another. Like, I'm not trying to put sports on a pedestal or gatekeep something, but the requirements for being proficient at one thing, enough to compete are way different than the requirements to this other thing where you're just sitting there, not forming any social connections with anybody other than the people on your team who don't even know you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there's something, first of all, with real sports, it's actually very healthy for your body and your mind. So when you exercise, your brain, not just your body that stays in shape, it's your mind as well. And I feel like that if you're just playing video games, your brain is not sort of getting the blood flow it needs, And I think pro gamers know this, and they actually exercise as well, like outside the game. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a surprising amount of them. I've seen a couple of them who, there's definitely outliers where some of them don't, exercise or anything. But there's some of like this. There's this guy named Tyler One. He looks really fit. You could definitely tell he does other things besides sit in front of the computer every day playing video games. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And he's a big Twitch streamer.
Yeah. So there are success stories, right? I just don't think this is the average person.
No, it's not. It's definitely like it's definitely an outlier. Like I said, I'd be willing to bet that less than 1 out of 200 people are actually going to make it well enough to make a living on Twitch. You know what I mean? Like, that's less than a 1% chance you have to actually do something with it, rather than doing other things you could be doing, having real life experiences. Like, there's this subreddit called Stop Gaming. I know that's where me and you found each other.
Yeah.
But you just see so much regret on that subreddit, like where it's just like, I could have done this with my life. I could have done that with my life. And like, it's a shame that people don't realize that until their adolescent years are past them and they're into adulthood. You know what I mean?
I feel like, I don't know if this is an extreme view, but it's like the game developers are like stealing it's like they're stealing like adolescent years away from people, Yeah,
and I don't think it was done intentionally back in the day. I know they wanted to make a fun game back during the Super Nintendo, the N64 era, but now it's different now. Like, even like looking back then to now, like the whole gaming thing is different. Like, everything, you can see it everywhere. Like, it's all designed to keep you playing. It's all designed to keep you in front of that television. Like, and that's just, it's just gross. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Yeah, it's gross.
Like Overwatch is actually what made me want to get involved in psychology. Because I know I told you that I was graduating this semester,
Right.
and I'd played Overwatch, and it was just really interesting just seeing every little mechanic. Like even when you kill somebody, a little red skull just flashes really quick in the center of the screen.
Yep.
And I would pay attention to that little red skull, and I noticed that like I kind of got a good feeling inside whenever that red skull popped up, or whenever you shoot somebody, you can hear like a little flip, 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 like just this little tiny sound that you know that you're hitting them. Like just all these little things that are in these games now that are designed to keep you hooked.
Oh yeah, and do you know what they have now as well, which is crazy. So you can put people into what is it called, an fMRI machine scanner, and you can get them to play your game, and you can read their brain waves to see how they're reacting to each of these things. So this is going to be used more and more. You put players into it's MRI machine, right, where they scan your brain. They'll put people in there, have them play the games, and they see how well each particular thing is lighting up particular areas of the brain and whatnot. So this is going to happen more and more. So that's pretty scary.
Yeah, I was doing a little bit of reading on it last year, and they found that your prefrontal cortex, which is involved in decision making, kind of fires off quite a bit when you're playing video games. But when you get addicted, because video game addiction is all dopamine, like it's all just your dopamine getting released into your brain. Yeah. Once you play video games enough, and you start getting that craving, your amygdala, which controls your fear, actually gets affected, and that's what gives you your craving, and that's what gives you a sense of anxiety that you need to be playing. Like, when people, and that's what they rely on, especially in those games where they have limited events, like that's your amygdala firing off. That's you getting anxious. Like, I have to play the game. I got to be in front of the game. I can't, don't worry about me for a few hours, wife. I have to play this video game. Like,
absolutely. So I also remember correctly, obviously the main addiction in the world at the moment is like your dopamine addiction. It's the same thing with social media and loads of other stuff, but same thing with video games. And if I remember correctly, what happens is that your dopamine receptors in your brain get desensitized to these hits of dopamine. And what that means is that the rest of the world, sort of, you're looking at trees and shit, right? Like when usually you can walk around, look at trees and water and shit, and it looks like it's kind of interesting and you're happy, right? But I think if you've been hyped up on video games for so long, you kind of go outside and none of these everyday pleasures sort of have the same effect anymore because your dopamine receptors have been blasted away, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. Because your body does get used to things. You take aspirin for too long and it stops working. Like it stops working as much. You take pain pills for too long and you get addicted and you need more. Like your body is constantly adapting to things that you use. So if you're firing dopamine in steady shots to it, it's going to get used to that amount of dopamine and need more to have any kind of an effect. And yeah, like you said, that'll desensitize you to things around you that aren't in that video game.
Yeah, of course. And that means that when you're trying to quit the video game and you're like, okay, I'm going to stop for 2 weeks, and you're just going to get unbelievably bored by the real world because you're not getting the same dopamine shots.
Yep, and it's going to suck you back in. I think, the brain it's such an amazing organ.
Yeah.
And, but it takes time. Like you'd have to be away from video games for like 3 or 4 months for your brain to finally start like getting back to the way it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I remember when I was 19, I went into the Air Force, and in the Air Force, at least back when I went in, apparently they're allowed to have their cell phones at boot camp nowadays. Jeez. But back when I went in, you didn't have anything. You didn't have cell phones. You didn't have TV. You didn't have anything. They took all that away. So for about 7 weeks, I was without like any form of video game, any form of communication with anybody but the people who were with me.
Yeah.
And it was weird. Like when I finally was able to because like I said, I was super addicted. I was spending all my time playing these video games before I went to the military. When I left, when I got done and I went to tech school where I had a bit more freedom to do what I want, I remember I bought a Game Boy Advance, but like I had like no desire whatsoever to play it at all, because my brain had started to go back to not needing it anymore.
I bet it felt great, right? After like 7 weeks of none of this shit, you probably felt like really good.
Oh yeah, it felt amazing. I felt a sense of guilt just because gaming had been a huge part of my identity growing up. So I felt a bit of guilt that I didn't care about it as much. And probably around 20, I eventually got sucked back in. But once I got married, my wife was like, she didn't want me to play video games as much as I used to. She said I played them way too much. So, I wish more people would understand how they're affecting people around them, because I just accepted that she was right. I don't play them nearly as much as I used to. But, yeah, it was just crazy, like just how much I didn't need it. But then I felt the guilt. And I think that's part of the addiction as well. You feel the guilt of having you're not playing anymore. Even if you don't want to play anymore, you still feel that guilt that you should be playing.
And you've also got like your social circle in the game as well. You can feel guilty that you're not talking to those guys anymore, right?
Yeah. Fortunately, I don't play too many multiplayer games. I do play one on occasion. It's called Dead by Daylight, and I have like 2 or 3 people I play that with. But like I said earlier, like you can call it a social circle. They're nice guys, but I don't know them. I know the state that they live in, but that's all I know. I don't know what their hopes and dreams are. I don't know what their interests are. Like, so I think for the majority of people playing video games, like they're your teammates when you're playing the game, but can you really call them your friends? You know what I mean? Like, can you go out and get a beer with that person? If you want to, can you go take a walk in the park with that person when you want to? You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's a problem because like you're communicating to them, I guess probably mostly by voice, right? And I guess sometimes you see them on camera as well, right?
No, I don't. I've never, one of them is an Instagram friend of mine, but that's it. Like the person lives way too far away for me to actually ever interact with the person.
And there's the thing is, you can't really have a proper bond or like a real friendship with somebody when you're kind of just, especially when you're just hearing voice. There's no way. There's a really different thing when you're talking to somebody in the real world and you're sat sort of right there. You get to see all of their communication signals, like you see their body language and their eye contact and all of this stuff, their vibe, All of this is completely gone in playing a game with them. It's not the same.
Yeah, touch is a big thing too. Just being able to like shake the person's hand or give them, give them a hug or just give them a playful shove. Like touch is you don't get that kind of that nonverbal communication with these people, online. Like it's all voice. Like it's I don't know if some people want to call them their friends. I guess I just don't see how somebody you're never going to meet you can consider them a friend.
Well, the thing is, human beings, we evolved to have face-to-face communication. Our brain is not evolved to have this kind of weird, like half semi-communication that we have online. It doesn't sort of understand it very well. It confuses our subconscious sort of brain. It gets kind of confused by what's going on because it's evolved to live in tribes, right? Our brain.
Yes.
It's evolved to live in hunter-gatherer tribes and of about 150 people. And so yeah, we were expecting to have face-to-face conversations with people. But yeah, so you can't really fully form a connection unless you're there with them, because that's what our brains are evolved to do. So yeah.
So yeah, I don't know where the video game world is going to go. I hope the gambling goes away. That's a lofty hope because Rockstar and Blizzard and all them, they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep it around. Oh, that's an interesting thing that you might want to know about that recently happened. I guess the Hong Kong protests are going on right now.
Right. Yeah.
And somebody over there won a gigantic, like enormous tournament. I want to say it was StarCraft, but I'm not 100% sure. They won a tournament in some Blizzard game, and they the two people who were kind of host casting the game, they went to the winner and they asked him like, oh, how do you feel or whatever, and the caster decided to use the 8 seconds he had, or the winner decided to use the 8 seconds he had to kind of say that he supports the Hong Kong protests.
Nice, yeah.
And he got banned for a year from all Blizzard competition. He got banned from his prize money that he was supposed to win got taken away from him.
What the fuck?
And the two casters who interviewed him got fired. And Blizzard, as far as I know, because the last time I checked was yesterday, they have not issued a statement on it yet, even though there's been plenty of backlash. This goes back to how you're saying that these companies are trying to get involved in government now, because it's right there. They're trying to get involved in government. Like,
that's so crazy. Like, you mean they're getting involved with the Chinese government, basically, right?
Yeah, because China is, there's a lot of players in China. Blizzard doesn't want to lose all those people, but they know that if they support the protests, China isn't going to be too happy about that. Like, the government of China won't be happy about that. China's not.
Yeah.
China's not like us. Like, China's not like the States or the UK, where it's like, oh, that sucks. Like, China will be like, yeah, no, we'll make it so our internet providers don't support your games and you can't play those things,
Right. Yeah, and this is how all this stuff works. Basically, how power works, right? So Blizzard, over the years, I mean, they're making so much money. They're becoming more and more powerful, and it's really weird to say. It's a really weird thing to say, like, oh, Blizzard is a powerful company. They're a gaming company, right? They make World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
But actually, once you accumulate a certain amount of money, you become this sort of entity that can have all kinds of power. Yeah.
More money, more power.
Exactly right. And you get to the point where you're influential to governments. It's like, okay, you've got, I don't know what their worth is now. Let's say they have billions of dollars, and it's like, okay, now they're like a real force in the world. Like,
let me look it up.
Yeah,
because you're making me.
Yeah, look it up. Like, if you're billions and billions of dollars, now you're somebody that needs, governments have to pay attention to. And you can pay off governments, to stop laws being passed and stuff like that. And Blizzard, as gaming is just going to get more and more prominent with VR, so they're going to become more and more powerful as well.
Yeah,
I can't believe that story.
Their net worth as of yesterday is $40.98 billion.
Holy shit! Yeah, that's massive. That's massive. That's got to be bigger than. That's got to be a higher net worth than some countries, I imagine.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And that's where gaming is nowadays. Everybody, like, you said yourself, like, stadiums are being filled with people who want to watch other people play video games. Like, it's becoming a huge force, which wouldn't be a problem if it wasn't so addictive and it wasn't such a life robber, because even people like who watch football, like, they only watch football for like 3 hours a week. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying every video gamer, every person who watches these things spends 10 hours a day watching, but I hate that I'm defending football, first of all, because I don't even like football. If it was up to me, football wouldn't exist.
Okay.
And I mean gridiron. I'm not talking soccer, but like, Joe Schmo, who's watching football, does it 3 hours a day and then goes on with the rest of his life. He watches it 3 hours a week. I mean, but you've got the tournaments, and then you've got the Twitch streaming, and then you've got your own ease of access to actually play the video game. Like, I don't know. It's too addictive right now. It's too involved in people's lives for me to feel comfortable with it personally.
But these games don't necessarily actually they don't. You could create these games without the addictive mechanisms, and people would still play them. Yes, they'll play them for less time. Like, if you think about it, did you ever play a game called GoldenEye on the N64?
Oh yeah, I did play GoldenEye.
So when you play GoldenEye, it's a really fun game to play, right? It was awesome. But there was, when you killed somebody, there was no like dopamine inspiring flash or whatever, like 10 experience points or anything like that.
Yeah,
none of that.
They just fell down. Yeah,
they just fell down, and that game was awesome. There was no need for any of this stuff. And of course, with GoldenEye, really, you would probably play it for at most like 1 or 2 hours. You would never play it for like 10 hours like you would games like now. So the point is that all of these things could be taken away, and the games would still be just as good. All of the addictive stuff, you could get rid of all of it, and because that's not what makes the game fun. What makes the game fun is like the game mechanics and how well they're put together. All the addictive dopamine hit stuff is like another layer on top that doesn't need to be there. They could get rid of all that shit, and the game would still be awesome.
And that's where, like I said before, that's where a lot of indie devs are going. Like, I occasionally play an indie development game, and some of them, the stories are so good. Like just the premise of them and everything. Like my favorite example is Undertale, because like that has no addictive properties to it. The game at most you can beat that game in 2 hours, and it's just such a fun game. It's such a good story. That's the direction that indie game devs seem to be taking. And like I said, maybe it's because they don't have the money to do the market research to make video games more addictive. Who knows why? But that's the indie games are the ones that don't have those addictive properties right now.
I like the sound of them. If there are some, when I used to play games, there were some games that are like, for example, many people know The Legend of Zelda 64. Excellent game. Oh my, it's like a work of art, It's like a work of art. There was another one called The Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah, I remember that one. Yeah.
That game is excellent. Again, no addictive mechanisms in the game. It was actually a very empty game, that game. You've got these big open spaces and nothing is happening. It's very empty game. It's very, what do you call it? Like bare bones, whatever. But it's such a good work of art. And there's another one called Ico by the same company. So those games are really good. They're my favorite games. Like that. Those are the games that I would actually play. So I would be interested in checking out some indie games. I'd be up for that. Something with a good story, like it's almost like a movie, right? But it's
and that's who knows what it's going to be like in a couple of years from now. But right now, fortunately, that's where those are at, just because they just don't have the money to, make it more addicting. Who knows? But
I think those games are going to stay on the sidelines, and the addictive ones will stay mainstream, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Because those types of games, the indie games where you play it once and it's done, like, they're the games that we were talking about when we were younger, where you bought the game, it was a complete game, that's it.
Yeah.
There was no continued stream of money they were expecting to get.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's what it's all about. That's how financial incentives shape everything. So yeah, that's games. So I think we'll excuse me. I think we'll wrap it up pretty soon. Do you have any last words or anything you want to say?
No, just if anybody is listening who are thinking about quitting gaming, it's not a bad life. Like I said, I only play it 2 or 3 hours a week nowadays. About 2 years ago, I started acting as a means to kind of distract myself from it. And, in about a week, I'll be playing a dream role that I've always wanted to play. So
awesome. There
is life outside of gaming. There's fulfilling life outside of gaming. So, I don't know, put the controller down for about 4 months and see what life gives you.
Yeah, I would say that. Just see what happens, right? Just try and experiment. Okay, let's see what happens if I don't play games for 1 month. And just see if anything changes, You might find holy shit, these games are really holding me back. Yeah, thank you so much. That was an awesome conversation. So thank you so much for...
Oh, thank you for having me, man.
That's all right. No problem. Thanks for listening, guys, and take care. Bye-bye, guys. Bye-bye.